The silence hit Ethan Miller harder than any argument ever could. 3 days before Mother's Day, his phone stayed dark. No text, no missed call. No family group message filled with flower emojis and brunch plans. For most people, that might have meant nothing. For Ethan, it meant everything. It's because in his family, Mother's Day was never quiet. It was loud, planned weeks ahead, and treated like a rule you didn't break. Ethan noticed it at 5 in the morning, sitting alone in his car outside a downtown Seattle hotel. Rain tapped against the windshield while the city slowly woke up. He refreshed his messages once, then again, telling himself not to read into it, but deep down, he already knew. He had learned to recognize the feeling, the one that came right before disappointment. At 32, Ethan's life didn't look the way his mother had imagined. After a short marriage that ended quietly, and a job loss that came suddenly, he worked as a private driver. He drove business travelers, executives, and visitors who needed someone reliable and discreet. The hours were long. The work was honest, and it paid his rent. That should have been enough. It wasn't, at least not for his mother, Linda. She used to talk about Ethan as if he were still figuring things out. At family gatherings, she changed the subject when people asked about his job. She smiled tightly and said, "He's between careers," even though he had been driving full-time for over 2 years. Ethan never corrected her. He told himself it wasn't worth the fight. By the time his shift ended that afternoon, the unease hadn't gone away. As he walked to his apartment, he passed store windows filled with cards that read, "Best Mom Ever" and "Thank you for everything." He wondered if his mother would notice his absence if he didn't show up, or if she would feel relieved. That night, while eating leftovers on his couch, Ethan opened social media without thinking. He scrolled past news ads, strangers' photos, then froze. There it was. A picture of his mother, smiling brightly at a restaurant table decorated with flowers. His sister Claire sat beside her, leaning in close. Plates of food were arranged, neatly untouched. The caption read, "Early Mother's Day dinner with my favorite people." Ethan stared at the screen, his chest tightening. He looked again, then again, no tag. No mention, no comment asking where he was. It wasn't just that he hadn't been invited, it was that he had been erased. His phone buzzed minutes later. Claire's name lit up the screen. "Hey," she said carefully when he answered. "I was going to call you." Ethan leaned back against the couch, eyes on the ceiling. "I figured." There was a long pause. Claire took a breath. Mom didn't want this to turn into a thing. A thing. He asked. She said. She didn't want people asking questions about your job, about why you work nights. She said it makes her uncomfortable. The words landed slowly, one after another, heavy and clear. So Ethan said, keeping his voice steady, she decided the easiest solution was pretending I don't exist. "That's not what she said," Claire replied quickly. "She said it was just this year, just one dinner." Ethan laughed, quietly, not because it was funny, but because it hurt too much to be silent. It's never just one thing. Claire didn't argue. She couldn't. After the call ended, Ethan sat there for a long time. He didn't feel angry. He felt small, like a guest who had stayed too long and was finally being shown the door without words. Later that night, he drove through quiet neighborhoods, finishing one last request. Houses glowed warmly through their windows. Families gathered around. Tables, laughing, planning, belonging. Ethan realized something then. No one had asked him how it felt to always explain himself. No one had noticed how tired he was of trying to be acceptable. When he got home, he opened a drawer and took out an old photo. It showed a younger Ethan and his mother standing in front of a lake, arms around each other, smiling freely. Then she looked proud. Back then, he felt enough. He placed the photo face down. The next morning, Ethan didn't call anyone. He didn't text his mother to ask why. He didn't send Claire a long message explaining his pain. He didn't post anything online. He simply opened his laptop and applied for a long-term driving contract he had been ignoring for weeks, one that would take him out of state, away from family dinners and uncomfortable questions. By noon, the offer was confirmed. Ethan packed. Quietly, he folded his clothes neatly, leaving nothing behind that might suggest he was running away. He wasn't. He was stepping aside. There was a difference. On Mother's Day itself, Linda Miller sat at a restaurant table with flowers in front of her and familiar faces around her. She laughed. She accepted compliments. She told stories. But something felt off. An empty space lingered in the background. Unnoticed, but real. Ethan spent the day driving clients across the city. He didn't check his phone. He didn't wait for a call that never came. That night, as he crossed a bridge with the city lights reflecting on the water below, Ethan felt something unexpected. Relief. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't trying to prove his worth to anyone. He wasn't shrinking himself to fit into someone else's idea of success. He was alone, but he was intact. And without making a sound, without slamming doors or leaving explanations behind, Ethan Miller quietly disappeared from the life that had already pushed him out. Not to hurt anyone, but to finally protect himself. The first time Linda Miller realized her son was truly gone, it wasn't on Mother's Day. It was weeks later, on an ordinary Tuesday morning. The house felt too quiet and the silence refused to pass. She stood in her kitchen staring at her phone, scrolling through old messages she had never answered. Ethan's last text sat there like a closed door. At first, she told herself he was busy. Ethan always worked odd hours. He always disappeared for days at a time. This was normal, she said. This meant nothing. But deep down, she felt the shift. Ethan Miller didn't vanish in anger. He vanished with purpose. In Vancouver, his life moved fast. The days were full, the nights steady. He drove clean black cars through busy streets, learned new routes, new faces, new rules. No one asked about his family. No one questioned why he worked late. His clients saw him as reliable, calm professional. For the first time in years, that was enough. He rented a small apartment near the water. In the mornings, he drank coffee while watching ferries cross the harbor. The city didn't know his past, and that gave him space to breathe. He stopped waiting for apologies that might never come. Back home, Linda began to notice what she had lost in small ways. Ethan's chair at Sunday dinners stayed empty. No quick check-in calls. No dry humor during holidays. Friends asked about him and she gave short answers, unsure of what story to tell. "He's busy," she said. But busy didn't explain the silence. Claire noticed it too. She tried calling Ethan more than once. Sometimes the calls rang. Sometimes they didn't connect at all. When she finally reached him, his voice sounded calm, steady, distant. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I'm better than okay, Ethan." Said honestly, "I'm just somewhere else now." Claire didn't push. She heard peace in his tone and knew pressing would only break it. As summer passed, Linda's pride faded into worry. She replayed that dinner over and over in her mind. The way she had chosen comfort over kindness. The way she had avoided questions instead of defending her son. She had told herself it was harmless. Now she wasn't so sure. One evening, she sat alone at the dining table and imagined Ethan across from her, telling her about his week. She realized she didn't even know where he was living. That realization hurt more than judgment ever had. In Vancouver, Ethan found something unexpected ease. He met Hannah during a late-night pickup. She worked in event planning, always moving, always tired, always kind. Their conversations were light at first. Weather, traffic, music on the radio. Slowly, they became longer. Walks by the water turned into shared meals. Shared meals turned into quiet comfort. Hannah never asked why his family never called. She didn't need explanations. She accepted what he offered and gave the same in return. Ethan learned what it felt like to be seen without being measured. Back in the U.S., Mother's Day came again, this time without celebration. Linda skipped the restaurant. She stayed home, flipping through old albums. She found photos of Ethan as a child, his smile wide and fearless. Somewhere along the way, she had mistaken control for care. Late that afternoon, a knock sounded at her door. A delivery. Flowers, no card, no name. Just a simple arrangement, calm and thoughtful. Linda knew immediately who they were from. She sat down and cried, not from joy, but from understanding. Ethan hadn't disappeared to punish her. He had disappeared to survive. The flowers weren't forgiveness. They were a boundary. That night, she wrote him a letter. She didn't make excuses. She didn't explain herself. She apologized, fully, clearly. She told him she was proud of him, not for his job, but for his strength. She mailed it without knowing if he would read it. In Vancouver, Ethan received the letter days later. He read it once, then again. He didn't rush to respond. Healing didn't need speed. He folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer. On a cool evening, walking beside the water with Hannah, Ethan felt something settle inside him. He hadn't lost his family. He had found himself, and sometimes that had to come first. He looked at the city lights reflected on the water and understood something important. Love should never require shrinking. Ethan hadn't disappeared forever. He had simply stepped out of a place where he wasn't valued and into a life that finally let him breathe.